Hello, everyone. My name's Ganesh, and I'm here with Mike and Subi to discuss a new topic in our podcast called Life Talks. Today, we're very excited to talk about something that is somewhat of a buzzword. Uh, this is executive presence. Historically, people have said if you work smart, if you work hard, you'll be successful. But over time, people have learned that being in a meritocracy is not necessarily the only way to be successful. At the same time, being street smart is not the only way to be successful. Having an executive presence is the link that bridges the gap between working smart and being in a meritocracy. So we're going to double click on what this buzzword actually means so that way we can share our experiences all together. Mike, Sobi, very happy to have you on board all together. How is everybody doing?
Thanks, Ganesh. Doing great. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ganesh. This sounds super interesting. Would love to hear more from your past experience on this.
Sure. So one observation I like to make in our podcast is that we have people who are in different stages of their careers. Some of us have been executives. Some of us are in midway in our careers where they're thinking about being executives or working very closely with executives, and others are early on in our career where we're aspiring ourselves to improve that executive presence such that we can be successful with such executives in our day-to-day jobs. So hopefully this type of spice variety will give us a good different flavor about what executive presence means to different people. So I'm happy to start by talking about what executive presence actually means. My definition of executive presence is more along the lines of, do we have the ability to inspire and ability to empower others? If we have that executive presence and get people to like you, to be confident in you and your ability to help get stuff done, that to me is executive presence. And thus is a very ambiguous word because it requires strong IQ and strong EQ all together. So Mike, I would love to start with you because you have been executive once upon a time in your past. And what does executive presence mean to you?
So there's several levels to this. First of all, you have to understand what your objectives are. So I want to achieve something in my company, and I have staff that work with me, and I have to get them on board to reach that objective. To get that sale and get that buy-in, it takes a bit of work. You have to consider each person's personality, right? That's one of the biggest parts. Who is working for you? Who are these individuals? What motivates them? What gets them driven to achieve something? Sometimes it's strictly fiscal. They're just driven by financial reward. So you can get them on board or better quality people on board by improving their financial reward for that particular objective. Or sometimes it's other things, lifestyle, or just the achievement, the objective itself is exciting. And the reward of accomplishing it can be super exciting. So for me, it's having the confidence in what you're looking to achieve and being able to present it in a way that everybody around you can understand that you rely on to achieve that objective. Does that all make sense?
It does. So what I'm hearing, if I'm just summarizing here, and feel free to keep me honest, you want to have that strong focus, a strong set of shared objectives. And when you have that, it's sort of like, my analogy is, attention is like a flashlight waving wildly in a dark room. And if you focus that flashlight with intent, people are focused and they're able to accomplish the navigation of that dark room. That's a very rough analogy, but I think that's a good way to phrase it.
I think another part of it is being able to see out further than most people would be able to see as well. So having the ability to see what obstacles you're going to have to overcome and the challenges that other people are going to face that you're relying on, right? So if you know somebody's not strong at a particular area, you know they're going to need to accomplish that area while going toward this goal, you need to be aware that that's going to be challenging. You have to make sure they buy in, even though they're going to have to do something they hate to do, or you even hate to do. And I think that's a big part of it too, just being able to see all the different pieces that go into accomplishing that goal or objective.
I think that makes total sense. Subi, I'd like to put you in the hot seat for a little bit. So who are the people that you think that you know in history have strong executive presence, and what does that mean to you?
Okay, so yeah, that's an interesting one. I'll start what really executive presence, how I understand it. I think it's being effective as a mostly like many people could be managers that they have a lot of people who are working for them, and there could be, I think there are two ways how people can get work done from other people. One is by authority and another is by influence. I think influence is a better choice because authority is more like, okay, because you have these X people reporting under you, you are just pressurizing them to work. But if it's so people can work, but it is not, it will be just you are getting 1x out of their performance. But if you are able to influence someone, then you can actually motivate them. Influence is like having a shared goal, as you were saying, Mike, giving them that, hey, what is their contribution? And I think that really needs a skill. And then you can actually get 10x out of somebody, and that person will also be super happy because in first situation the person or your employee or anyone like your coworker may not be motivated or happily doing that, but I think people when they're happy they are more if they're able to put in more passion and the results are better. So I think to me that's like executive presence where you can motivate people, influence them, and actually steer them in the right direction. Because if
Mm-hmm.
in current
Well,
work
that's a
I
good point.
see, yeah, lot of there are like lot of like why there is a conflict. Generally, people have either different point of view of data
Hmm.
or they don't know the constraints. So somebody as a leader has to come in who can actually break that ice and then steer the conversation in one go. And I think that's what is important to be effective. Otherwise, it's like meetings and meetings and meetings will happen, but nothing will go on.
Well,
So
actually, yeah, I actually love what you're saying about this. What strikes a chord for me is that having people share the success with you, right? Being able to express to them that this success that we're going to achieve at the end of this is theirs as much as anybody else's. They're a part of this huge accomplishment, and it's super rewarding. So everything you're saying is feeding into this idea that I love.
yeah, and I think it's important because it's not just like managing your like how you like your reportees, but also managing up cross sideways your customers, people who are maybe even like you have to influence, right?
Yeah,
So that meeting the business goals, the customer goals, depending on the role you are in. So Ganesh asked me who I admire. So of course I will, because
sure.
there are historically many great leaders, but I would take example from the companies from where I have worked. So I have had managers of all different categories. I shouldn't say categories, but all different personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Where some would be like I could somebody. I think it's very easy to see who is a mature leader versus who is just managing people. So I think a mature leader, specifically like in my last job, I did see that he was able to convince everybody, different departments, people. He was like a go-to person, and the presence of such a person would just like boost 5x, 10x out of a team, and the retention rate in the company. Like I was working in the job for a long time just because I loved my team. I was always
Mm-hmm.
motivated. So I think I would portray that kind of a leader who is super effective.
Yeah, it creates a good morale across the entire organization, and is super reliable and knows how to communicate across a wide spectrum of individuals and individual motivations. Right, that's huge. That's a great executive. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
And then
So I
also knowing one of the things I think is important in that, and what you kind of brought up, is the ability to delegate that work across those different groups appropriately, and selling your team's value up the stream, as well as selling the concepts that are being fed down to you as an executive from above
mhm.
to your teams, and helping them be motivated even if they don't necessarily agree with the perspective of what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, I totally agree with Mike and Subi. I think to your point, you don't want to be transactional. You want to connect. Essentially, connect, don't transact. If we do that, then we can storytell and influence and engage others a lot more effectively. And if we're able to storytell and engage and connect with people, as opposed to thinking in terms of concept like resources to get stuff done, then you can delegate a lot more effectively. So I think delegation is a way of helping ourselves scale. In my early days in working in startups, I learned that, while we have very smart people, we can try to do everything ourselves. But if you want to get to that 10x level of performance, you can make 2 plus 2 equals 5 as opposed to 4 by learning to delegate. And the best way to delegate is to have a framework. Basically, you have the BCG type framework where you have cash cows versus the big money makers versus money pits. Basically being able to prioritize that sort of work that you want in those sort of buckets and map that against the people that and essentially have some sort of like a piggy bank, which I call a trust bank. How much trust do you have in those people? And try to map those, big wins, big bets that we want with people who have large trust banks. And those who have, minimal trust bank, have them do the necessary but not so impactful work to minimize risk. So that way you can build up the trust
Sure.
bank over a period of time. So that's a mental model that I've used successfully and not so successfully. But I would love to hear how people delegate.
So Ganesh also would love to know, other than like we jumped into delegation, so that's like you suggest is like something, one of the core aspects of being effective. I agree. What are the other things, like if we can just give a map, like delegation becomes one, what else should somebody be looking forward for to being effective?
That's a good question. I would say one, body language is important. And body language includes the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you take advantage of pauses. I have seen people go
Oh,
through
you're fully correct.
self communication exercise to improve their ability to improve their monotonic tones in their voices, take advantage of pauses, remove stutter words, show confidence, and be able to do improv. So there's a reason why I'm a huge fan of people who do Toastmasters, people who do
Hmm.
stand-up comedy, because they have the ability to think on their feet, even though one may not think that it has adds value professionally, but in my opinion, it does. And it also adds a little bit more variety in the personalities. The second one, besides body language, I would say, ability to delegate. And the third one is learning how to let people down in systematic ways. Basically, you only have so many hours per week. You have so many people that you have to work with. Of those people, who can you let down the most gracefully so that way you can work with people for the work that matters most. So those are the three things that I think helps a lot with executive presence. I'm sure there are many other mental models, but Mike and Subi can have. Anything else you'd like to add, Subi and Mike?
I think also if you look at the process of delegation, making sure you're able, sometimes you get things that you have to delegate that are horrible. You know that they're going to be difficult projects. You know that you don't have a perfect fit for this project. It just has to be done. And where you go with that and who you go to with that have to be some of the most trusted people that you have. And you have to be able to have just that personal conversation like you were just saying, where you're just frank. You're like, yeah, I know this is not the most ideal project, but we need it for this to be accomplished. And so like you just said, letting somebody down with consideration and grace and recognition is very important. I agree with that 100%.
Okay, I think I really like delegation, but also the first point, which is important to you groom yourself well. I think the reason is
Hmm.
because it boosts your own confidence. If you are like in that power posture, power dressing style, so you feel like super confident, and then you can exuberate it in your surroundings as well. That's one reason I can think of. But I have seen people who come to improv because I love improv. I That's why I did like this radio talking, even this podcasting. It's all live, and I just enjoy that. However, I do still feel that there might be like, how if somebody is good at these things, but they, because I have a lot of friends and some colleagues I have seen, and including myself, I do feel there is like, I'm a lifelong learner and I would love to learn, to grow, to even a better, to make myself more effective. If somebody has all these skills like outside their professional life, how can they leverage and just like go to that last step, bring this
Sure.
personality to their work environment as well, because there are like some biases, like being a woman, being a woman of color, and then once you have all these other, like I would share my problem here. Generally, I've observed it depends if it depends on the like what setting I am in. I do have that awareness, which is like I am very different person. If there are some people like me, or
Sure.
I am like an alpha, then I am like able to control and demonstrate my executive presence and very effective. But if there is someone who is having even like maybe I would say I'm still okay with 2x, 3x of my personalities. But if they're very like dominant personalities, I find it difficult. I must admit that. So I would love to learn, and I think there are many more people like me who would love to know how to handle things in that kind of a situation where we feel like there is somebody who we admire, or then how do you really influence them further?
I think
Everybody's
that's it.
motivated by a different thing, right? So
Sorry.
I guess everybody's kind of motivated by a different thing.
Yes.
So if you want to influence somebody, you kind of have to know how they work, what they respond to, what they enjoy, so that you can move them in your direction. How you present things can be very important. Everybody looks at the world in different ways. Some are visual people. They see things by you telling a story and drawing a picture for them. Other people are kinesthetic. They feel it. They have an emotional response, so they need to feel that.
Most of the settings, it's hard to know, like like
Of course.
I'm walking in an office meeting, I might know some people, but our roles are like highly cross-functional, where there are new stakeholders all the time. Over the time, it's possible to meet, but there are meetings, I think, very often where I don't know who is this person joining. But yes, to your point, I do
Sure.
sure if I have some time before meeting, I do a prep. That has always helped me look at, okay, what is this person about? Is he a technical person, a business person, so I can present my point of view that can be most like that this person would be interested to hear. So that's the thing I do, but still I find it like, what else can I do, or people like me can do?
Yeah, I
I
think you
think
do need to know the background, right? That's a big part of it. So that's good on you for that. Ganesh, if you have an opinion, that'd be great.
so. I think there's a couple of things that stood out. One is uh, facing a dominating personality. How do you manage that? And the second part is how do you connect with such dominating personalities? I can speak from my own personal experiences of where once upon a time I worked in a very big financial company that sells credit cards. This person that I worked with, he was a very boisterous person. He's Italian. He loves soccer, and he somehow was able to use his extroverted personality towards his meetings, and it would dominate the conversation altogether. I think in that sort of environment, uh, you will have to understand his background, understand his incentive structures, and what helps move the needle for him. Like, what is he interested in? This might require you to do some homework, like Mike suggested, where this leader, Italian leader, was focused on a project that was focused on launching a new market, or a project that was trying to build relationship with this particular manager of that. So if you are able to parlay different elements towards a shared objective that you have, for example, I know that you notice you're trying to launch a new market. uh, we have shared objectives here, and if we have shared objectives here, I can connect you with this particular other person to help make that launch a little bit more easier. And let's circle back offline, and we can figure out how we can do this together. In that way, you're trying to position yourself towards that shared objective. The second one, as opposed to handling that sort of voices personality, if you don't have the prep work, is a concept of mirroring, where you
Yeah.
basically you serve as a mirror for that personality. Here you're going to say, I think your points are fantastic. I like to plus one that. And basically, if I have to summarize correctly, and here um, I want to say that, by the end of this time, we want to accomplish XYZ when we launch this new market. How do we get there? I think
Yeah.
it's going to be super
Good point.
important. So let's figure out a plan together on what we need to do to get to that point. Uh, from now, my observation is XYZ. Do you agree with that? If not, let's figure out a plan on how we can get to that agreement. So the
or ask them for their suggestion, right? That's another way of doing it, is try to bring them in by asking for their suggestions. If you're a boisterous personality, you're looking for attention, right? You want people focused on you in some manner. So to bring them alongside you, you have to bring them by asking them questions and bringing their thoughts into the mind, into what, and sharing, oh, that's a great idea. I like that idea. What do you think of this? And then add that into it. So it becomes part of their own story. Something they can tell. You're interjecting a piece of something that they can tell to tell the story for you.
So sometimes I think these people who have who are more outspoken, they may not even realize that they are just not giving space to other people to speak up. And sometimes I think I used to struggle actually many years ago, that what would happen that like we all want to make a solid point. At least I would only speak if I have something major to contribute. And I think we should all do that, rather than like, that's my advice, that don't just take the speaking time. Otherwise it demolishes your presence rather than making you positive in the concept of executive presence. So, but if like sometimes your voice or your tone is maybe like low pitched, or I don't say mine is that low, but still I have seen people who just don't give you any space. Then and especially during I have seen like some of my team members struggle currently during audio calls or remote work, because in a room you can still gauge, okay, now I have an opportunity to speak up, or you can use your gestures, body language. But let's say there are 10 people, I am not even looking at the camera of everybody, that who is next, who's gonna speak.
Sure.
So how do you advise, like what would you suggest somebody who is struggling to, who has great ideas, and then how can he or she can come up and present that in a way that is taken very, very positively?
Yeah, so there's several mechanisms that one can do. The first one is, if you have people that you're attending a meeting with and you know that they have excellent points that they want to say, or if you observe someone else trying to speak up and they're not able to get their points across because someone else is dominating conversation when they get interrupted. Frankly speaking, I have had effective meetings where I didn't even speak at all, but at least said, hey, I agree with your point. I did notice that one of my colleagues who has great expertise in this area, she was trying to make a point too, and I'd love for her to, share that with us, so that way we include her thinking all together. Just by saying that all together is also a form of executive presence and acknowledges that this person wants to speak, and it'll send a signal to the other person who is dominating that this person, pardon my language, should shut up a little bit. So hopefully that is one mechanism. The other mechanism is to have a private chat, especially in a Zoom-like world, where you have attendees in the meeting where they say, I have a question I'd like to bring up, or I noticed that this other person was going to make a point, and allow that person to give like a soft introduction while the person is continuing to drive the conversation. And the third one is some Zoom, Blue Jeans, and other types of platforms, they have a raise hand feature where people should be obligated to raise a hand and speak or share their reactions, like clapping or thumbs up, that sort of thing. So I've seen those mechanisms be used effectively in a Zoom-like COVID world, but to each his or her on that point.
I also think that one of the other ways to do it, Serbi, is to ask for your time prior to a meeting. Have some points you want to make. Have a presentation ready, even if it's 5 minutes. It's a 5-minute thing. I had some ideas. You just go to whoever's running the presentation. I had some ideas. Can you cut 5 minutes out for me toward the end or toward the middle or toward the beginning where I can present my ideas? And that gives you the opportunity to speak. It also shows that you're willing to take control of a situation. So if you're looking for executive presence from that standpoint, it's another way of getting your voice heard while going through proper channels, showing the respect to the individual who's creating or running these things as an authority in that position. So that's another way. I know we're running out of time here. Are there other topics we want to discuss?
I do want to double click a little bit more on this, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah. We got about 5 minutes. We can talk a little bit more.
Yeah, just to give our listeners some actionable points here. So what I'm hearing, that it's good to have some, like supporters or sponsors with whom you can get you can expect they can support you, but like that's a very ideal situation. Let's say somebody is new in a company, and that's where this is most important, right? Or he or she
Hmm.
is presenting somewhere in a completely new setting, no sponsors, no supporters. How would you suggest somebody to just go in and demonstrate their like effectiveness immediately? Any
What are
tips on
you
that?
coming in at? What position are you, it depends on what position you're coming in at. Are you coming in as an executive? Are you coming in at a lower level below executive position?
I think it's
Where, of
important for everybody to,
course.
go to the next level. So I would say somebody from any like maybe not an entry level person, because then your technical skills do matter. But let's say middle to higher. But there is always a scope. Like whenever you're even growing further, let's say a startup person is going to a larger company,
Hmm.
or a director is becoming a VP, or just an IC is gonna wants to become a team leader, or just IC wants to become like an individual contributor, wants to be more effective and has a new role. So various scenarios. I don't think it will vary a lot unless you think that I think everything will be very useful for our listeners. Any
Well,
tips
let's
that?
say
Mhm.
let's say you're coming in just as a technical person. You're not an executive. You're not expected to take an executive role initially. It's kind of like being a rookie in a locker room. I don't know if anybody's sports here, but it's like they want to feel you out. The executives want to feel you out. So what projects you take on and how you perform for them and how good you make them look gains you the ability to start having more authority with them, which gives you more latitude. But in initial stages, if you're coming in that position, a lower level position, you probably just have to, you know, have conversations, but really focus on what you're going to accomplish for them. They have things for you to do. You take
Yep.
on the most challenging jobs that you know you can handle so that you can look good, and you go after those and you make that happen. If you're coming in as an executive, there's a different expectation. They're going to want you to be able to take immediate authority. They're going to want you to engage your team. I think a great executive, we talked about this before, gives room for their people that report to them to speak in any meeting, in any conversation, so they can get great ideas from those individuals. So, when you're first coming in, the big thing is gain a team mentality of the group that reports to you, right? You want to make
Yeah.
sure they feel like they're a part of your team. It's your team. You're the manager of this team. And then above you, you want them to feel like you have control of your team and your team is going to execute for them on their objectives. So it really depends on where you're coming in my opinion, of how you're going to present yourself and what you're going to do.
Okay, I
Yeah,
would.
I like to plus one on Mike's point and also add two more anecdotes. The first one is if you are a new person in the organization, you should play the new person card easily. Because I say that because the people are more likely to want to meet with you over coffee chats, to back channel with you before the meeting, to pre-flight your points all across before that meeting, just by playing the new card. And even in the meeting, you can say, I'm new to the company. I may not be an expert. I don't know this to the greatest detail, and I admire what others have done here. But I want to make sure that I ask a question to make sure that I can get the full detail, or I can connect with people offline about that. Just by simply acknowledging that you're new or you're not an expert, but you would like to learn more, it's a form of executive presence. And it shows that you're interested. The second part is, to Mike's point, is who's keeping the monkey off your back? Is it a concept that my managers have used in the past where basically people want their lives to be easier? And the best way to do that is to keep the monkey off those executives or those colleagues by taking on the monkeys on their behalf by using your technical expertise. If you can relate your projects or some work that can
Right.
help solve a problem or figure out a way, say that, let me get back to you and figure out how to take this problem or monkey off your back and come back to you with a solution. You don't have to have a solution, but at least have a proposal that I'm now going to take on this action item within your capacity, of course, to help keep
Agreed.
this monkey off your back. People like people who take on monkeys on their behalf. So
That
Have
that's
you
sounds
one.
ever?
amazing. So, one last question for this talk today.
Sure.
Let's say, how do you demonstrate this? Like many people ask me, I sometimes help people in interviewing. They say, how do you even start demonstrating that? Once you meet somebody that, hey, I'm really good at it. Like, let's say the person is meeting a hiring manager or someone, then they, of course, these 2 points are excellent. You cannot play the new person card or take the monkey off. So any tips for that
When
kind
you
of?
first come in to a meeting, to like
Not
HR or something
there.
like that?
You're not there, and so even in order to be there, you are like, I'm just saying, let's say you
You're
are
trying to get the
in the interview
position?
phase. You're in the interview phase, and you are somebody is looking for, I want somebody who can actually help me take off my work. So I want somebody who has that ability. How would you advise someone who wants to demonstrate their ability to convince
Yeah,
that, hey, I'm the one?
that's incredibly important that you have a quick read on the person you're talking to. So you need to try to know the personality of the person that you're talking to. And when they're speaking, agree with them on a regular basis and expound on points that they've made. You want them to engage with you. You want them to feel like you are an advocate for what they're hoping to get from you. So you want them to feel like it's not just a person another hire sitting across from them that they're going to get, that is going to get a huge benefit from them hiring them. You want them to feel like this is a person I can work with. They're going to come into my family. I'm going to end up working with these individuals. I need to be able to rely on them understanding what I'm talking about. I need to be able to trust them. And so you have to build that in that first meeting. I know it's not a lot of time to do it, but it's like any other sales thing, right? You're trying to sell something. You need to market yourself. You need to have kind of a presentation based on the person you're talking to, but really make it so that they end up talking to you more than you talk to them. That's one of my favorite things. I tell my kids this all the time. And the interview isn't just about you. It's also about the legacy that they have, that they want to continue and support. And so you need to make sure they're aware that you understand how valuable what they've put in and their history is.
That sounds great. Ganesh, any tips you have before we?
I think the concept of mirroring Mike's excellent points. I think the monkey concept still resonates with this particular topic, where if you are trying to figure out how to insert yourself into a conversation, context is super important. You have to figure out you want to do this before the meeting or during the meeting, or mentioning as a action item at the end of a meeting, saying that you would like to follow up based on your skill set, or even afterwards. Getting the context is super important, and getting those allies who are in the meeting who can speak on behalf of you also adds to your executive president. So there's no one single bullet that will solve this particular question. So you have to feel this out, do trial and error, and see what works best for you. I think we covered a lot of different topics in executive presence today. So we talked about the topics, why is executive presence a buzzword? What does it mean to each one of us? Delegation, how to prioritize, how do we interject ourselves when we may be new or uncertain. So I think these are all excellent lessons, not just for others, but hopefully for ourselves too in our years ahead.
Thank you, Ganesh, for recapping, and I really enjoyed brainstorming this topic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Serbi and Ganesh. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Thanks so much, and feel free to reach out to us, especially if you can help us get monkeys off our backs.
All right, guys, have a good evening.
Thank you.